Today we're going to be canning green beans. They're coming in like crazy from the garden, and I will show you how to can them today. You're just going to work the green beans up in small batches. You're going to wash a few little handfuls off at a time. I like to put them in a Ziploc bag with a paper towel at the bottom, so I can put them in the refrigerator and keep them cool until I have a chance to string them. Next, you're gonna snap the ends off and remove any strings or buggy spots. These are jades, and so they don't have a lot of string. There's a buggy spot, so you just wanna snap that off and put it in the waste bowl. Alright, next we're going to put the green beans in the jars. You can kind of stuff them down in there. We want to leave 1-inch head space, so I'm just going to move them over a little bit. I usually try to make sure to get them below that lower rim. Okay, and then just fill them up until you have a canner full or you are out of green beans. My canner holds 7 quarts, so that's what I'm shooting for right now. Not quite sure I'll have enough, but we'll see. These green beans I had strung earlier, and I could not get to them in time, and so they stayed in my refrigerator for about a day, so that's okay. They'll stay fresh in the refrigerator for that amount of time. Okay, now it's time to add the salt. All right, next we're gonna add 1 teaspoon canning and pickling salt per quart jar. So I got a little bit of a leak or something in this box, so I have to have a plastic bag underneath it to catch the extra. Whoop, it's a little extra. That's all right. Be a little extra salty on that one. It's okay, as long as it's close. All right. Okay, now it's time for the water. So what I normally do if I take my green beans out of the fridge is I boil water to pour over them to help bring them back up to temperature. All right, I'm gonna take my hot water now and I'm gonna fill up each jar until it's got about 1 inch head space. And I'm going to take a butter knife and just stick it down the sides. Make sure there's no air bubbles down in there. And sometimes that will make your water go down a little bit, and so you have to add a little bit more. So that looks pretty good. You want your green beans to be pretty covered. Alright, next you're going to wipe the rims down. I use a little bit damp paper towel. Make sure there's no like salt or anything on the lid, on the rims. That will prevent them from sealing. Especially if you're a little bit messy like me. You can kind of get the salt on the rims. Okay, all done with that. Alright, next you're going to add your lids and your rings. You're going to put the lids on and then just tighten your rings down. Not like ultra tight, but snug. And if you're going to be a rule follower, you should probably boil these first. I do not usually boil them before I pressure can. I do boil my lids and rings before I do like hot water baths for other things, but for green beans, I do not boil my lids and rings, but you're probably supposed to. So, if you want to do that and be ultra careful, that would be in your best interest. All right, all done with that. Next, you're gonna add your water to your canner. My canner requires 3 quarts, so that was just my last of the 3 quarts. You'll have to look at the manual for your canner to determine how many quarts of water is needed. I had another old canner that only needed 2 quarts. You cannot use the Instapot for pressure canning. It's not safe, so you really need to purchase a legit pressure canner. All right, here we go. Next, you're going to put all the jars in your canner, and they have to go on a rack. So there's a rack in the bottom of the pressure canner, and that's to keep the jars from busting, hopefully. Every once in a while, you'll get one that busts, but it helps decrease the risk, I guess. You want to make sure that your lid is in good shape. So like the little nut that's on the bottom of this is nice and tight. Your sealer on the bottom is nice. And it's not dry rotted or anything. It's in the right place. You just want to make sure everything is nice and intact before you get started. Next, you're going to put your lid on, and then you're going to twist it to make sure it latches all the way. And the handles are lined up right here. It's hard to video, I'm sorry, with one hand. And so then once you're sure that the lid is latched, you're gonna leave, there's a little cap that goes on this guy, but you're gonna leave it off for right now. That's where the steam's gonna come out. You'll notice this little sealer thing has got no pressure to it, and there's no pressure over here. So then I usually put my heat on high and go ahead and let her start to try to steam. Alright, so once this little guy has been steaming for 10 minutes, then you can put that on, and pretty soon this guy will pop up and make a seal, and it'll let you know that your pressure is enough to start building your pressure right here. So we're starting at 0, and we're just going to watch it. I leave my heat on high until I get my pressure where I want it, and then I cut my temperature down just a little bit. Okay, so we are at 10 pounds of pressure, actually 11 right now. So I'm going to start the timer. 25 minutes for quarts. And then for that, you just want to follow your canner booklet. It'll tell you exactly how long to do for different types of vegetables, at what pressure. And so at this point, my burner is still on high, and so I'm just going to turn it down a little bit. My burner goes on like a 10-point scale, so I'm going to cut it back to about 2.2, and then let the pressure start to come back down just a little bit. You can see how fast it's going up. You really don't want to go over 15, and you don't want to go below 10. So you want your pressure to be above 10, and it's okay to get on up a little bit high, but you don't want it to get past 15. This little guy right here will start bobbling if it gets up to 15. And I guess there is some danger with pressure canning, because if it gets too high, there's just nowhere for the pressure to go. So you want to keep a close eye on it during this time. Oh, and I also wanted to mention, when the steam is coming out of here, sometimes this guy pops up before you get your little cap on, but that's okay. After it pops up, just put your little cap on, and it's totally fine. Once my pressure canner starts to calm down a little bit, and it's about 11, I'll turn my heat up just a little bit. So on mine, I'll turn it up to like 2.6. And if your pressure canner gets way too high, like it's at 15 or beyond, then just turn your burner completely off. So you're just going to play with your heat up and down. You're going to keep the heat pretty low during this time. So I'm going to turn mine back down just a little bit, and the temperature will come back down a little bit. I did want to make mention that I do pressure can on a glass top stove, and that can be kind of dangerous because it can cause the glass top to break. But I've canned on glass top stoves for about 12 years now. And I think the thing that helps me the most is that I do not, once I turn it off, I don't slide it across the stove. I just leave it right on the burner and let it come back down to regular temperature on its own without removing it off of the burner. And I think that helps because the temperature doesn't fluctuate so quickly on the stove. So that's my tip for that. Okay, it's been 25 minutes. I just turned my burner off. It got just a little bit high, but that's okay. I turned my burner off, and I'm leaving it in the exact same spot on my stove. I'm not sliding it over. I'm just going to let it calm down naturally. You do not want to touch your cap or the lid. You don't want to touch the cap right here, and you don't want to touch anything. And you're just going to let it cool down. The pressure will go all the way back down to 0, and then this little guy right here will drop down, and then you know it's safe to take your lid off. And once you take your lid off, you can take the jars out and listen for them to seal. Okay, so the canner is done. The pressure's down to 0. This guy has dropped down, and so there's no more pressure, or there's not enough pressure inside to push that up. So it is safe to take the lid off. Now, I will say, if you take it off as soon as this thing drops down, there's a lot of steam, and it's really hot. And so I don't normally take it off that quick. I let it rest for a few more hours if I have the time, or I let it rest overnight, and then I take the lid off. All right, so then you just take the jars out. You can use a jar grabber thing to keep your hands from getting burned, and you just take them out, and oh, one just sealed. So I don't know if you heard that, but that is what you're listening for, to hear if they're sealed. And I don't know if you can see, like, this one is still popped up, so it's like rounded on top, and this one is not. It's like concave, and so this one is already sealed and this one has not. But as soon as it seals, you'll hear it pop and it'll turn into that concave. If it does not seal after a few hours, then you can take it and put it in the refrigerator and eat them, you know, within a week or so. All right, that's it. When you go to cook your green beans, you can pour the whole jar in with all of the liquid and then cook it on a high heat until it simmers all the way down and it makes a really good flavor. My grandma also used to brown like a little bit of bacon and then cook her green beans in like a little bit of the bacon grease, and that is also really good. I just don't always have bacon. But it is delicious, so I hope you guys enjoy.